Let me talk about looming dangers as a way to close this on a down note instead of an up note. But these are quite important. The web is maturing. We're just getting around in many countries to examining how to use the web for public administration. Meanwhile, many things are happening on the web. The closing of the commons, I'll talk about 3. States that are starting to build what I would call hyper-surveillance systems. The state is not only not going away, many states around the world are becoming very, very strong. Cybersecurity and realpolitik. The August issue of Wired magazine, for those of you who read it, had this on its cover. So why are we talking about the web if the web is dead? There are some logical possibilities here. Either they're not correct, or they mean this facetiously, or we don't care that the web is dead. We're going to keep rolling out our projects anyway because we already started them and paid for them. What do they mean? I won't read you this long quote, but what it basically says is what most people are using now are preformed, proprietarily owned applications. If you know about the iPhone craze or you have an iPhone, you know that people are crazy about apps. There are more than, I think, 250,000 apps for the iPhone. Most people are using applications. They're not on the net. They're not on the web. They're using preformed applications. One response is to say, fine, these applications work well. Why do we need people? People can go mash up open source material if they want. Elinor Ostrom, who just won the Nobel Prize last year, for her lifelong work in managing the commons and how common resources can exist and can be managed, would not be happy to learn about this turn of events. The article in Wired, and now many, many other areas, including a very fine book by Jonathan Zittrain, say that when you really look at mobile ecosystems, it's the back end, the power and the functionality in the back end that is really giving you the power. That network effects are not just the number of users you have, but how as you get more and more data, you continue to refine and to add power to the application. Google's chief scientist says it's not that we have better algorithms, we just have so much data. Our algorithms iterate towards something much more powerful than those that don't have as many iterations. These applications are more and more locked down. They're ruled by terms of service. They're proprietary, you're going to pay for them, and you can't manipulate them. This is a big change from the open frontier of the World Wide Web. And as governments, we have to be prepared to figure out how we're going to deal with a world in which the platforms may not be as open as we want, in which the applications may not be as open as we want. Here's the US State Department, an architecture you could find all over Eastern Europe or many countries of the world, but that's what our State Department looks like. It's meant to be powerful. Last January, in a remarkable speech, an absolutely remarkable speech, which you can hear on the web, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said, "Internet freedom is a major foreign policy goal of the Obama administration." Many of us were astounded by this speech. What she said is where internet freedom is infringed anywhere on the planet, that there will be a foreign policy reaction by the United States. I think this is an example of, quite frankly, with all due respect, very naive thinking about how the web works, about its democratizing effect around the world, and how it intersects with politics and public policy. The Washington Post and many, many other organizations reported on this. You may remember at the time, this is when Google discovered that it was being hacked. What does it mean that a company the size and the importance of Google can be hacked? It had been hacked for several months, it appears, before they even knew that their company and their data had been penetrated. They were very careful not to accuse the Chinese. So realpolitik is meeting social media. The public affairs director for Google said, "Our goal at Google is to maximize free expression and access to information." Google's public affairs chief is a former speechwriter for the Clinton administration. So the administration was working with one of its largest companies manipulating or developing foreign policy around digital activism. Many digital activists in authoritarian regimes around the world are very concerned about this, and they're thinking of it as a hijacking of the very important work they're doing in their social movements by Western countries that are going to, as they say, hyper-politicize and possibly put people's lives in danger. These are very political comments, I know, but we can't avoid them because this is where social media and the web and its lack of boundaries is leading politics. Some people are calling this the new chessboard of 21st century statecraft. I'll skip over this. It's 5 million, not very big, civil society 2.0 to build new media for civil society organizations. The Netherlands and France have developed codes of conduct on internet freedom. This is something that will definitely be coming across the desks of any of you. The same way that countries, democratic countries, have always supported political dissidents and supported democracy, however they define democracy, the emerging idea is that we should be supporting cyber dissidents, but the way that we're doing it is something that has to be worked out over time. So some people think that the U.S. is hijacking online free speech for strategic interests. My inbox has been flooded with these conversations on various listservs. I'm not going to take you through all of these. This discussion we'll get to this provocative picture in a minute, but the discussion has been that some Western countries will go after protection of cyber dissidents in some countries, but maybe not other countries. And it depends on the relationships with those countries. Why are you seeing this picture? Because it was on the front page of the online version of The Guardian. This is a fellow 23-year-old software programmer who was building anti-censorship software, tremendous support from the U.S. State Department, other government money to help with cyber dissidents. Well, it turns out that the software they were building was not going to protect the online communications of dissidents in Iran and could have cost many people their lives. But the software was so hyped and there wasn't enough expertise to actually examine the software that it was being used in authoritarian regimes where it's very important that if you tell someone you're keeping their information secret, that they know it really is secret. So this poor fellow, Austin Heap, not so poor fellow, is in the doghouse among cyber dissidents. The project was called Haystack. I invite you to read about it because this is the new realpolitik of the digital world. The other realpolitik are cameras everywhere, surveillance over our everyday lives, what we say, what we do on the net, our email communications. You might remember the U.S. had total information awareness. Countries have the capability to do this. Many of them are doing it. Why am I bringing it up here? Because civil servants have the obligation to be keepers of democracy and keepers of freedom. So the systems and the public policies that we're developing have to be ones that are going to deepen democracy. It doesn't just happen because the internet and web somehow deepen democracy. There are very important implications here for design, for architecture, for what data is combined with what other data. So let me finish by saying the web offers marvelous possibilities for innovation and transformation. The web is changing. It's becoming privatized. Sovereign powers are reasserting their control over the web. If a country wants to shut down the web in its country, it will shut it down. If a country wants to shut down YouTube, it will shut it down. So the notion of a free worldwide web is a construction that we made at a certain point in time, and whether it will remain has to do with the decisions that political policy decision makers and civil society make. We need effective institutions in order to protect openness and democracy. Thank you very much. Thank you.